Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. If you ever get to visit Tasmania in Australia, it is a must that you must visit this beautiful place called Port Arthur. Port Arthur is a town and it is a former convict settlement on the Tasman Peninsula. It is located about 100 kilometers southeast of the state capital Hobart. The site forms part of the Australian convict site. However, it is most popular for a 1996 massacre, which was a defining event in Australia's history that led to major gun law reforms. I don't want to go too much into the dark history here. I want to talk a little bit about what you will get to see here. So this was established in 1830 as a timber station, but it became a penal settlement somewhere in the 1833 for repeat offenders from other colonies. It was known for its strict discipline and separate prison system designed for psychological punishment. Among all these buildings that you see, you will see that most of them are original. They include the penitentiary, the guard tower, the separate prison, and even the commandant's house, all of which I will show you here. Later on, I will also show you how you can take a short boat ride to the settlement's burial ground. It's a must see. It's located on the Tasman Peninsula. It is surrounded by forested hills and water, and it gives it beautiful isolation, but beauty within isolation. I didn't stay at night here, but you can also explore in the night and join what we know as ghost tours and take harbor cruises. Uh, Although this place began as a timber station, it mainly is known for the convicts who re-offended in the colonies of UK. Known for its separate prison system where convicts were isolated in silence instead of flogged, it was meant to reform them, but it often broke spirits. Hard labor, shipbuilding, timber work, and stone masonry were some of the common jobs that the prisoners were expected to perform. Many buildings were constructed with convict labor. The penitentiary that you see, the separate prison, the hospital, the commandant's house, the churches, they were all built by the prisoners actually. The penal colony closed in 1877 and the settlement gradually became a small town before transforming itself into a heritage site. Like I said, Port Arthur is also the site of the massacre, one of the Australia's darkest days, which prompted sweeping national gun law reforms. It's a sad story where a person on 28th April 1996 uh, killed 35 people and wounded 23 others. And It's a dark history, but otherwise this place is beautiful. So Port Arthur is a window into the Australia's convict past and also the gun law reforms and a place of reflection and learning today. It is one of Tasmania's most visited destinations where history, nature, and remembrance meet. You can come here a bit early. It's about a 90-minute drive from Hobart or a 3.5 hour drive from Launceston, which are the two biggest cities of Tasmania. You can go and collect your entry ticket and visitor map at the visitor center. You can start with a short introductory guided walking tour, which is included with entry, and it gives you the lay of the land and key history. The guard here will take you around, tell you about the history, and explain everything how it was. You can also see the miniature versions of the whole prison system and how it is set up. You can visit the penitentiary, which was once a granary, and then the main convict barracks. You can walk up to the separate prison where solitary confinement was enforced, something that you must see. It's so hard to imagine how people were confined to a solitary prison like that. You can stop at the asylum and the museum to see convict relics, stories, and artifacts. About midday, you can also take the cruise. I will come back to the cruise later on, but that cruise passes the Isle of the Dead and the boys' prison. So later on, I'll show that to you. Maybe in the afternoon, you can visit the commandant's house for insight into the life of the colony's leaders. You can walk through the dockyard area, which was once one of the busiest shipyards in Australia. You can also explore the convict church ruins, which are striking and atmospheric. And then you can wander into the government gardens, which contrast with the harsh prison life that you are expected to imagine when you're walking around. spend some quiet time at the garden, and you can also reflect on all the tragedies that have taken place at this time here. If you want to stay till night, you must stay overnight at this place, otherwise it gets a bit late. But you can return after sunset for a lantern lit ghost tour where they tell you stories of hauntings, strange events, and the darker side of the convict life. It is best for those who like history mixed with a little bit of chill of atmosphere. You don't get to see real ghost, not in my opinion. You don't get to see it, but try to wear comfortable walking shoes. The site is quite large, as you can see. It was quite windy the day we were there, so you can see my hands are shaking, and the lens is getting blocked as well. But weather can change very quickly, so make sure you bring a jacket along with you. Um, if you want to know a little bit more about the history, the separate prison, which was a chilling example of the silent system where prisoners were kept in solitary confinement. They were even forced to wear masks so that they couldn't see one another. And you will see cells, chapels, and corridors. The asylum and the hospital are relics of where mentally ill prisoners, these are the ones were confined and treated alongside medical wards for injuries and diseases. Um, then the dockyard, you can see later on when we take off from the ship, is you can see foundations and relics of what was once one of the busiest shipyards in the colonies where convicts built ships from local timber. You will also get to hear stories about how convicts not only built ships, but they also tried to escape, and some of them actually rowed the vessel all the way to Sydney. And how some of them were caught, some of them died at sea. But it's such a beautiful sight, as you can see in the video. It's really worth a visit. The guard tower and the military precinct also show the relics and how tightly controlled the site was, with soldiers watching over the prisoners. This is where the dockyard is. So you come here to take the vessel to the Isle of the Dead, and what we known as the Point Pure or the boys prison. There is some vending machines here from which you can buy some food if you get hungry. You can also buy some drinks. There are certain timings for the harbor cruise. Definitely do the harbor cruise. It's really worth the time. It's sometimes windy. That day we went, it was pretty windy, but it gives you the full spectrum of Port Arthur. You can go around and see Port Arthur even from the sea, and it's a beautiful sight, as you will see in my video today. The Isle of the Dead is where the convict and the free settlers cemetery with over 1,000 burials. The gravestones of the officers are visible, while most convicts were buried in unmarked graves. Point Poor, as you can only see it from the harbour, it will be the site of the first prison-built juvenile prison in the British Empire. So all the young boys, that's where they were kept. But you can see how many people are taking to it, and they board the vessel. The vessel also has a cafeteria, and you can buy food from there as well, hot food as well as packaged food. Um, and you can sit inside if you think it's a bit windy or cold, or you can go upstairs. That's what I did. I braved the wind and the cold, and sometimes it's drizzling as well, so people go outside and stand on the deck, of course, because you get to see this view. Unbelievable view, and unbelievable experience as well. While we take the boat tour, I can tell you a little bit about the juvenile convicts, receiving many boys, some as young as 9 years old. And the boys were separated from the main convict population, and they were kept on Point Pure. You can only see Point Pure from a distance on the ship, but that was the British Empire's second boy prison. So, like the adults, the boys were used in hard labor, such as stone cutting and construction. One of the buildings constructed was on one of Australia's first non denominational churches, built in Gothic revival style. So, the archaeology of Port Arthur will reveal the relatively mundane activities of everyday life. Not only did these people living there help prepare food, they also participated in recreational activities such as smoking and hunting. Um, and a number of archaeological and historical research projects at Port Arthur. They include an interactive web mapping of criminal offences or convict offences. The geography, the peninsula on which Port Arthur is located, is naturally a very secure site by being surrounded by water. It is although rumored that there are sharks here, but there hasn't been any shark attack incidents as I know of recently. Um, the shore based and ship based whaling was banned in this area to prevent convicts trying to escape in the boats. Officers at Port Arthur sometimes set out in their own boats and attempted to catch whales. That is what is known. And this was more like a sport than a commercial activity. Uh, Contact between visiting seamen and the prisoners were barred when it was a prison camp. Ships had to check in their sails and oars upon landing to prevent any escapes. Later on, I'll show you a miniature version of the whole settlement as it was originally when the prisoners were there and the ships would be coming in. It was it's a fantastic recreation, something that you must see towards the end of the video. Port Arthur was actually advertised as an inescapable prison, much like the Alcatraz Island in the United States. I don't know if you have ever visited the Alcatraz in San Francisco. That is also worth a visit. But some prisoners were not discouraged by this and they still tried to escape. In fact, there's one prisoner called Martin Cash who successfully escaped with the two others. So, this is a story that will be recited to you as well. And listen to that story. It's very interesting how they built a boat and they escaped. And despite its reputation as a pioneering institution for the new enlightened view of imprisonment, Port Arthur was quite harsh. It was brutal as other penal settlements. And some critics might even suggest that its use of psychological punishment compounded with no hope of escape, making it one of the worst prisons in the world. Some tales also suggest that prisoners committed murder just to escape the desolation of life at the camp. The Isle of Death that you can see here was the destination for all who died inside the prison camps. Of the 1700 graves recorded to exist there, only 180 are those of the prison staff and military person, and those are the ones that are marked. This prison, of course, closed in 1877, after which it was abandoned, and some people saw the potential tourist attraction and they thought, let's set this up as a tourist attraction. Now, after the prison closed, much of the property was put up for auction. However, most of the property was not sold until 1889. However, the building started to decay. This was also seen as something positive, as the Tasmanian population wished to distance itself from the dark image of Port Arthur. And those who bought Port Arthur property began tearing down the buildings. The destruction was furthered by fires which happened, which destroyed the old prison house, and there were some earthquakes as well, apparently, which destroyed it further. You can hear all that history when you're on the boat. It's a great tour, something that you should think of doing when you visit there. Since 1987, actually, the site has been managed by the Port Arthur Historic Site Management Authority. And conservation works are funded by the Tasmanian government and the admission fees paid by visitors like you. Now, volunteer groups have been working at the building site to help researchers gain a better understanding of the history. And the World Heritage Committee of UNESCO has actually inscribed the Port Arthur Historic Site and the Coal Mines Historic Site onto the World Heritage Register way back in 2010. That is why this becomes even more important for you to come and visit. Remember, Port Arthur is one of Australia's most visited historical sites. You can see the view, it's beautiful view. You can see the whole Port Arthur from the ship. They almost get a 250,000 visitors each year from all parts of the world and locally as well. Of course, in 1996, it was the location of the massacre. Martin Bryant was the name of the person. There are movies on him and documentaries on him as well. He was, of course, captured by the Special Operations Group, but it led to a national restriction on high-capacity shotguns and rifles, because the 28-year-old guy, he was convicted and he's serving 35 life sentences. He was also in the psychiatric wing in Hobart. However, that was the basis made to reform gun laws in Australia, and that is why you cannot just buy guns as easily as you can in other parts of the world like America. This is where I'm showing you all around. These are the places around that you must go and see. Of course, there are rumors and there are stories that people will tell you about ghost sightings and other things as well, but I think it is more from a tourist point of view. You can see the old post office or things, other settlements which were here, and you will get to read the stories. You will get to read how the officers stayed here, how brutal it was, and how strict people were, even for the smallest of commit mistakes or stealing, people would get imprisoned in the harsh imprisonment of Port Arthur. However, you should go there and visit it because it's a beautiful site, it's a historic site, something that is not very easily seen in other places. It is juxtaposed against a beautiful, tranquil landscape, and it's known for its ruins and innovative but harsh approaches to convict discipline. And it's one of the largest convict settlement. It was apparently a penal colony for approximately 12,500 convicts between 1830 and 1877, which makes it one of the most significant sites in Australia's colonial past. The whole site, it boasts of about 30 buildings and ruins, and there is a roofless church, of course, and it's set within spectacular gardens and picturesque harbor, as you can see. Um, Visitors often comment about the striking contrast between the natural beauty along with the tragic, dark history. You can also see other things while you are here. You can visit the Mount Wellington, the Pirates Bay Lookout, the Tasman Arch and Devil's Kitchen, Isle of the Dead, zoo, something that I will show you later on. So the only place I could do was the zoo. That is called the Zoodoo. It's a great zoo as well, as you will see, very interactive. You can go around and interact with the animals. Great place for kids. This is also a great place for kids if you want to take kids along with you, because it's got a lot of space to run around and burn their energy. There are museums that I will show you later on, places to eat. So um, it's really worth a visit because it's part of the UNESCO heritage thing, and you should plan for at least half a day to a full day, or even maybe 2 days. I whenever I go to Port Arthur, we always stay overnight. Now I'm a local Tasmanian, I stay in Tasmania, but I still go and stay overnight, and they've got some great accommodation. Some accommodation is near the sea, some accommodation is near a natural forest. There are people who camp there as well, so if you want, you can also rent a camping van and drive around Tasmania. Now I will show you these miniature settlements that have been created just to replicate what was life like way back in the 1830s. There are some interesting interactive activities here also that you can do. I will show you that. This is the settlement, and I will take a closer look here. But before you go into the miniature settlement recreation, this is an interesting activity that kids often do. You press on this, and when you take it out, you will see some story about a convict and the punishment he or she was subjected to. The prison was separate, of course, for men and women, and but it was very brutal for all of them. So this is an interesting thing that they make you do there. You can also keep the card. It's part of the souvenir. Some people take it as a souvenir, however I didn't. But this was what I wanted to show you, was how beautifully they have recreated the entire landscape of Port Arthur and how it was way back in the 1830s. As you can see, that some of it is still there, but some of it is of course changed over the course of time. See how beautiful the harbor has been created. They've also put a ship there to show you how the ships used to come in. There's a signal station that has been created. You can also see how far the ships would be or harbors would be from the actual prisons. The whole timeline is explained here. I didn't want to show you entirely everything, and of course I can keep going about the history because I made a lot of notes about the history. It's also available online, but I wanted to showcase mainly what you get to see here. There are other parts of the museum as well that you can go and have a look at if you are into history. I wanted to get out of the Port Arthur prison and also take my friends and show them a Zoodoo, the interactive zoo. So, but the model of Port Arthur is also something that you should not visit. Many people often miss it because when they are leaving Port Arthur, they don't check into the museum here or the site here because it's such a huge site. People often spend a lot of time at the site and then they get tired and leave without looking here. But I strongly recommend you going into this place and just marveling the history of this place and also enjoying how it was during that time, how the communications would take place from the ships, how they would use semaphores. This is all maritime history also that you will enjoy. So as you can see here, the telegraph was worked by a prisoner who would communicate with the ship. So these are all these interesting stories that you get to read, and make sure that if you have young kids who can read, ask them to read as well. They will love the history, because the way it has been written there, it almost feels like you are reading a script of a movie or a story, and you just go into that imagination. You will not be able to help but imagine, and that is why this recreation of the settlement is very important, because when you read the stories or you hear the narrations and you come here towards the end of the trip, that is where you start to enjoy. We then went to Zoodoo, which is about 30 or 40 odd minutes drive from Hobart. And you see how you can interact with animals here. It's a very hands on, family friendly wildlife park. It's not a very traditional zoo, because it's got a mix of native and exotic species. You can see Tasmanian devils running around. You can interact with kangaroos, as you can see we are doing that. You can interact with wallabies. You can feed emus, meerkats, lions, zebras, capuchin monkeys, reptiles, farm animals, many more. So of course you get to interact only with the animals which are safe, like the kangaroos and the wallabies, but you can feed some of the other animals. So you can buy $1 feed, and you can go and feed the emu and the camel and the cows, and it's a very interesting experience. Just be very careful with the emus. The emus are not as docile as you think they are. They will sometimes they will get excited and they will attack the food, but they will not attack you unless you of course annoy them. But the kangaroos and wallaby interaction is one of a kind. If you come to Australia and you don't do this, it's really not fair, because you must interact with kangaroos. So you also have walk-through enclosures, as you can see, where you can hand feed the kangaroos and the wallabies. Sometimes there are also safari bus tours that take you through open paddocks. You can see the lions here. There's a lion and a lioness, and there are some times when they are fed and you are allowed to feed them, and that is also an experience maybe you should not miss. It's a great experience. So the safari bus tour will take you across paddocks with ostriches and camels and zebras and antelopes. Nowadays they have stopped the bus tours, I think. The last time I went, the bus tour was not happening, but the one before that it was happening, because sometimes the ostriches and the emus would come and interact, and the camels would come and interact, and people would get scared. But you can also pay a little bit extra and interact with meerkats and reptiles if you want to do that. But otherwise, all these interactions are within the cost of the ticket. You will also get to know about the breeding programs and education about Tasmanian wildlife, particularly about the endangered Tasmanian devil that you see running around in circle. Here he was, it almost seemed like he's exercising. But kids love this place, and it's great for up close feeding and interactive shows. You can sometimes also hold a wallaby or a wombat, rather a wombat, in your arms. Again, you have to be very lucky to do that. But there are many kinds of animals that you can see. You can also go to Richmond, which is close from here, and you can see the Richmond Bridge, which is one of the oldest bridges in Australia. And take the safari bus, right, if you want to. Hand feed the kangaroos, walk through the enclosures. You will love this place. These birds will interact with you. This is the capuchin monkeys I was talking about. Hope you get to visit this place one day.